Well, I'll be damned. You think you've got life figured out, right? Then the universe decides to remind you just how little control you really have over anything. Let me rewind for a second. The name's Ethan Morris. Up until a few days ago, I was living what I thought was a pretty damn good life here in Atlanta. Nice house in Buckhead, an amazing wife, a great kid, and a solid job at one of the top law firms in the city. I'd been grinding for years, 60, 70 hours a week, doing whatever it took to give my family the best. We had it all. Vacations to the Caribbean, Sarah driving a brand new Mercedes, our daughter Lily going to a fancy private school. Life was good, or at least I thought it was. Turns out I had no clue how badly I was being played. It all started on Thursday night. I was in the office, working late like I always do, preparing for this huge case coming up. Then, before I knew it, it was past 1 a.m. when I get this text from Catherine that simply says, "Where are you?" with about 10 question marks. I quickly reply, "Working late, be home soon," and leave it at that. When I get home around 2:30, the house is dark except for the glow of the TV in the den. There's Sarah, passed out on the couch, still wearing her makeup and clothes from earlier in the evening. I nudge her gently, and she wakes up in a daze. "Ethan, what time is it?" she mumbles, rubbing her eyes. "It's late, babe. Let's get you to bed." She tries to get up, but she's a bit wobbly, so I support her as she stumbles upstairs. She reeks of wine and cigarettes, which is strange because Sarah hardly ever drinks, and she definitely doesn't smoke. As I'm helping her up, she suddenly turns and gives me this sloppy kiss. "You know I love you, right?" she slurs. "You're the only man for me." I just laugh and pat her back. "I love you too, honey. Let's get you some water." The next morning, everything seems fine. Sarah's already blow-dried her hair, looking like nothing happened. I'm in the bathroom when my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. No name, just a bunch of random digits. It says, "You might want to check your wife's phone." I stop, rereading the message, trying to make sense of it. What the hell is this? I quickly text back, "Who is this?" but get no response. That's odd. Downstairs, Sarah's making coffee, dressed in a skirt suit, looking every bit the picture-perfect Atlanta socialite. I walk over, showing her my phone. "Hey, babe, any idea who this number is? They told me to check your phone." She takes a look at it, and her face drains of color. "What? No, I don't know. That's really weird." She's avoiding my eyes and fidgeting in a way that doesn't feel right. Something's definitely off. "Do you have something going on that you need to tell me about?" I ask, my voice sharp. The text made it sound like, "Ethan." She interrupts, glaring at me.
No.
Of course not. You know I would never do something like that. Some people just like causing trouble. She leans in and gives me a quick kiss. "I've got to run. I'm late for a meeting. We'll talk later. Okay?" And then, just like that, she's gone. I stand there for a moment, staring at my phone, even more confused than before. The whole thing felt off. Sarah was never a good liar. If she was hiding something, she was doing a terrible job at it. I try to shake it off and head to work, but that strange feeling doesn't leave me. All day, I'm going through my usual routine, negotiating, reviewing contracts, handling whatever comes up. But in the back of my mind, that text keeps nagging at me. I get home around 8 p.m., and to my surprise, Sarah's actually cooked a nice dinner. Chicken parmesan, garlic bread, the whole spread. She's being unusually attentive, refilling my wine glass, asking me about my day, almost like she's trying too hard. Over dessert, I finally ask, "What's going on? You're acting really strange today." She gives me this fake, confused look. "What do you mean?" I slide my phone across the table. "That text from this morning. Why did it make you act so weird? You know you can tell me anything, right?" She lets out a deep sigh and reaches for my hand. "Ethan, you've got to believe me," she says softly. "I'm not having an affair or anything like that. I would never betray you." She pauses, looking at me with those big, doe eyes that used to melt my heart. "It's just, well, I've been feeling really insecure lately. About my age, about my body. You've been working so much, and part of me wondered if maybe you were, I don't know, looking elsewhere. Maybe having second thoughts about me. She stares down at her plate, her voice tinged with vulnerability and regret. I suddenly feel like the biggest fool in the world. Oh, babe, you know I only have eyes for you. I squeeze her hand reassuringly. You're the most beautiful woman in the world to me. Whatever that text was about, it doesn't change anything. I trust you. She lets out a relieved smile and dabs at her eyes. I'm so lucky to have you. I don't know what I'd do without you. We hug, and she holds me tight, almost too tight. But as I hold her, I catch a glimpse of her phone on the counter, the screen lighting up with a new message. I can't see the contact name, but the words catch my eye. Last night was incredible. My blood runs cold. I feel like someone just punched me in the stomach. The words replay in my mind like a nightmare I can't escape. Last night was incredible? What the hell does that mean? I barely slept, tossing and turning while Sarah slept soundly beside me, completely unaware. By morning, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train, tired, nauseous, and hollow inside. I pushed through the day at work, my mind elsewhere. Every time I closed my eyes, those damning words flashed in my mind. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I stepped out of a deposition and found myself Googling private investigators in Atlanta. Within an hour, I was sitting across from a guy named Kyle in a shabby office in a strip mall, telling him everything. Kyle looked exactly like what you'd expect from a private eye. Out of shape, balding, and dressed in a rumpled suit. But there was something sharp in his eyes that made it clear he'd seen it all before. Look, buddy, he said, leaning back in his creaky chair. Hate to break it to you, but if a guy thinks his wife's stepping out, chances are he's right. Seen it more times than I can count. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache forming. I just can't believe it. I can't believe Sarah would do this to me. It doesn't make sense. Kyle shrugged. Doesn't have to make sense. People get bored, get restless. They start looking for something else. It happens to the best of us. I cringed at his bluntness, but I knew he was probably right. I took a deep breath and looked him dead in the eye. I need to know the truth, no matter how much it hurts. What's your retainer? We went over the details, and I wrote him a check that left me feeling queasy. But I knew I wouldn't be able to rest until I knew what was going on. I headed home, the thought of confronting Sarah making me sick to my stomach. I stopped by a bar and knocked back a few bourbons to steady my nerves. When I finally walked through the door, Sarah was curled up on the couch, flipping through a magazine. She looked up and did a double take. Whoa, you look awful, honey. Everything okay? I forced a tired smile. Yeah, just a tough day at work. I think I'm coming down with something. She frowned, walking over to feel my forehead. You do feel warm. Why don't you go lie down? I'll make you some soup. I nodded numbly and shuffled off to the bedroom, feeling like the biggest sucker alive. Here I was, hiring a private investigator to follow my own wife, and she was downstairs playing the role of the caring wife. What the hell was wrong with me? I tossed and turned in bed, my mind racing. Every kind word, every loving gesture from Sarah over the past few days now felt like a performance. She was just covering up her guilt. 2 weeks later, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. I grabbed it groggily and saw a text from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. Got something you need to see. Meet me at the Waffle House off I-85 tomorrow at 6 a.m. Come alone. It had to be Kyle. My stomach sank. I knew whatever he had found, it was going to be bad, really bad. Here's a reworked version of this part, with more changes. I slipped out of bed before dawn, careful not to wake Sarah. I threw on some clothes and crept out to my car, trying to keep my movements quiet. The Waffle House parking lot was nearly empty, save for a few big rigs parked at the far end. I spotted Kyle's beat-up Honda and parked next to it. He was already sitting in a booth, hunched over a cup of coffee, papers scattered in front of him like he was preparing for war. Morning, sunshine, he greeted me. A smirk on his face as I slid into the booth across from him. Hope you haven't eaten yet, 'cause what I've got for you is gonna make you lose your appetite. He slid a manila envelope across the sticky table. I stared at it, my hands feeling like they were frozen in place. I didn't want to touch it, but I knew I had to. After a long breath, I flipped it open. What I saw inside made my stomach churn. I could feel the bile rising in my throat. Photo after photo, each one worse than the last. There was Sarah and my worthless brother, Jason, all over each other in my car, the one I let her drive, and then at some seedy motel by the airport. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Kyle leaned forward, his voice rough and low. "There's more," he said. "Brace yourself." He slid a flash drive across the table. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop, dreading what I might see next. The video started, and my heart almost stopped. It was some kind of party, only not the kind of party I was used to. Dozens of couples were milling around in fancy clothes, sipping champagne, acting like it was some kind of high society gala. But something felt off. The way they were looking at each other, the touches that lingered a little too long. I felt my pulse race as the camera zoomed in on two figures in the corner, half hidden behind a potted palm. I nearly choked on my breath. It was Sarah and Jason. They were kissing. No, they were all over each other, making out like no one was watching. I sat there, frozen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The camera kept rolling, and what followed felt like something out of a nightmare. Clothes coming off, bodies colliding, my wife and my brother in the middle of it all. My wife, my flesh and blood, putting on an exhibition in front of strangers, for anyone to see. I slammed the laptop shut, my stomach rebelling. I felt the hot rush of shame and rage flood through me. What the hell kind of party was that? I rasped, my voice unrecognizable. Kyle leaned back, arms crossed behind his head like he was telling me a bedtime story. "It's called a key party. Bunch of rich, bored suburbanites trying to spice up their lives. Swap spouses, swap partners, whatever. Looks like your brother and sister-in-law decided to join the fun." I felt like the room was spinning. I couldn't process it. This wasn't happening, not to me, not to us. We had a life, a family. But suddenly it felt like it was all just a lie. The next few days were a blur of numbness. I went through the motions, came home, tried to act like everything was fine. Sarah was there, making dinner, asking about my day, smiling at me. But I couldn't look at her the same way. All I saw was her tangled up with Jason, putting on a sickening show for a bunch of strangers. I started staying late at work, anything to avoid being around her. The pain inside me was constant, like a raw, aching wound. I couldn't escape it. One night, I found myself parked outside a dive bar off Ponce, nursing a bourbon and watching the door. Kyle had tipped me off that this was one of Jason's regular spots. Around 10 o'clock, he walked out, wearing that smug expression I hated so much. He hopped into his BMW, no doubt headed off to some other woman's bed. The temptation to confront him right then and there was almost overwhelming. I wanted to drag him out of the car, beat him senseless, make him pay for what he'd done to me, to Sarah. But I stopped myself. As much as I wanted revenge, I knew I had to be smart. I had to gather all the proof I could before making my move. So, I began documenting everything: texts, emails, phone calls, tracking their locations through our phones. I became obsessed, like a man possessed. It was during one of those long nights at the office, staring at the photos and videos from Kyle, that it hit me. I'd recognized the background in the videos. The art on the walls, the sleek furniture, the breathtaking view of the Atlanta skyline. That wasn't just any penthouse. That was the residences in Buckhead, the place where Tyler, my old frat buddy, lived. He was a big-time developer, always bragging about throwing wild parties that felt like something straight out of a reality TV show. That's when it hit me. This was my chance to catch Sarah and Jason in the act, to expose their sordid affair to the world, and bring their entire twisted existence crumbling down. I started plotting, running through every possible angle. By the time I left the office at 3 a.m., I had a plan in place. I was going to that party, and I was going to make damn sure everyone there saw my wife and brother for the filthy cheaters they were. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I was consumed, meticulously setting everything up while pretending everything was normal at home and work. I managed to get an invite to Tyler's next bash by telling a little white lie about wanting to join his country club. Of course, he bought it, Tyler was a master at working a room. Meanwhile, I was diverting money into a separate account, stockpiling cash, and preparing for the storm. I even contacted an old friend from law school who had become a high-end divorce attorney in Buckhead. He gave me the rundown on how to protect my assets and, if it came to that, secure custody of Lily. I wasn't taking any chances. Finally, the night of the party arrived. Surprisingly, I was calm as I slipped into a fresh suit, ready for the performance of a lifetime. Sarah gave me a suspicious look as I got dressed. "You're awfully dressed up," she remarked. "What's the occasion?" I forced a smile. "Oh, didn't I tell you? I got invited to a party by one of my clients tonight. You remember him? George Bennett from Georgia. I didn't realize you two were still close." "What can I say? The guy's a real pal," I said with a wink. "Might be a late night, so don't wait up." With that, I grabbed my keys and headed out, leaving her standing there, her face a mix of confusion and something else. Guilt. Maybe? Showtime. The party lived up to my expectations and then some. The penthouse was a sprawling, modern mansion, offering a sweeping view of the entire city. It was packed with Atlanta's elite. CEOs, celebrities, the old money types, dressed to the nines, dripping in jewels. I grabbed a glass of scotch from a passing tray and blended in, scanning the crowd for any sign of Sarah and Jason. The people around me were all beautiful, laughing just a little too loudly, sipping overpriced champagne like it was water. That's when I saw them. Sarah was wearing a tight red dress that left little to the imagination. Her hair and makeup were flawless, not a strand out of place. And there was Jason, smirking like the arrogant jackass he was, hanging on her arm and whispering in her ear. They looked every bit the part of an upscale couple on the prowl. A white-hot surge of rage coursed through me, but I forced myself to stay composed. Not yet. I had to be patient. I needed to wait for the right moment to make my move. Clutching my drink, I started weaving through the crowd, keeping my eyes on them. I followed them from room to room, watching as they worked the party, mingling and schmoozing like they didn't have a care in the world. All the while, I could feel the tiny voice recorder hidden in my pocket, ready to capture every word of their betrayal. Eventually, they slipped away from the main party and down a hallway. I hung back, following at a distance, my heart pounding in my chest. When I turned the corner, I saw them disappear through a door at the end of the hall. There was a faint red light glowing from underneath. I approached cautiously, testing the handle. It was unlocked. I took a deep breath and cracked the door open just enough to peek inside. What I saw I still can't shake. It was like something out of one of those eyes-wide-shut parties. Masked men and women everywhere, tangled in a frenzy of bodies on beds, chairs, against the walls. And right in the middle of it all, Sarah and Jason. That's when everything inside me snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. With a roar that felt primal, I stormed into the room, shoving people out of my way. I grabbed Jason by the hair and yanked him off my wife. People screamed, rushing for the door as the fight spilled into the hallway. Then, I felt hands grab me from behind, trying to pull me off. I spun around, fist raised, and came face to face with Sarah. She looked absolutely stunned, her perfect makeup smeared, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, oh my God, what are you doing here?" she cried, clutching a sheet around her body. "Exposing you two for the sick freaks you are," I yelled, my voice cracking with rage. "Did you really think you could betray me like this and get away with it? I have everything. Every text, every video, every moment of your disgusting affair with my own brother. And I'm going to make sure everyone we know sees the truth about who you really are." Behind her, Jason was curled up on the floor, looking like a pathetic mess. "Don't even bother coming home," I growled, my voice thick with venom. "It's over." With that, I turned and stormed out of the room. The drive home felt like a blur. I don't know how I made it back to Buckhead in one piece. My mind was spinning. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost couldn't get the keys into the front door. I barged inside, slamming it shut so hard the windows rattled. "Lily! Lily, honey, are you awake?" I yelled, my voice cracking with emotion. I had to tell her, had to prepare her for the storm that was about to hit our lives. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and there she was, my little girl, my pride and joy, standing in her pajamas, looking like a deer in the headlights. Dad, what's going on? What happened? Her blue eyes were wide with fear and confusion. I opened my mouth to speak, but all that came out was a strangled sob. Lily rushed over and threw her slender arms around me, hugging me tightly. Dad, you're scaring me. Please, talk to me. I held her close, burying my face in her hair. She still had that little girl scent, baby shampoo and the innocence of childhood. How was I supposed to shatter that? Your mother? I managed between ragged breaths. She's been cheating on me, baby, with your Uncle Jason. Lily stiffened in my arms. What? No, that's not possible. I saw it with my own eyes, I said. Hell, I've got photos, videos, proof. They've been having an affair for months, sneaking around at parties where people just... I couldn't bring myself to describe the depravity I'd witnessed. The thought of tainting Lily's innocent view of the world made me feel physically sick. She pulled back, her face pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. Oh my God, I can't. She looked around frantically, as if the room itself were spinning. Hey, it's okay, I said, grabbing her by the shoulders to steady her. We're going to be okay. You hear me? Whatever happens, I'm not going anywhere. It's you and me, kid. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears, and then she collapsed back into my arms. We stood there, holding each other, crying for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, Lily's sobs slowed, and she pulled away, wiping her eyes. What are we going to do? She asked in a small, fragile voice. I took a deep, shuddering breath, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt an eerie sense of calm settle over me. Well, first thing tomorrow, I'm calling my lawyer. We're filing for divorce and starting the process of separating from your mother. Lily flinched at the word divorce, like it was a physical blow. But does it have to be that way? Maybe if we just... I raised my hand to stop her. Lily, I saw what I saw with my own eyes. There's no coming back from that. No rebuilding trust after such a massive betrayal. Not just from your mother, but from Jason too. The flicker of rage reignited inside me at the thought of my own brother's despicable actions. But I quickly smothered it. I had to stay strong for her. Your mom made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. I won't let either of us be dragged down with her. Lily nodded slowly, her tears starting again. I think I need to lie down. Of course, honey. I pulled her in for one last hug. It's going to be okay. We'll get through this. As long as we have each other, we'll make it. I promise. She gave me a brave smile before heading upstairs. I watched her go, my heart breaking for the pain she was going through. Pain that I had caused by exposing this ugly truth. But deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. The truth had to come out, no matter how painful, no matter how devastating. I poured myself a triple shot of bourbon and swallowed it in one fiery gulp. It was going to be a long, sleepless night. My mind was spinning with a million thoughts and plans. I needed to take control of our finances before Sarah got any ideas about cleaning me out. I had to figure out where we'd live, whether I'd fight to keep the house or just start fresh somewhere else. And, oh God, how was I going to explain all of this to our parents and our friends? The humiliation and shame felt like it might swallow me whole. I thought about calling my lawyer, Tom, right then, but I was too worked up, too raw. I needed to be clear-headed before making those crucial first moves. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and started documenting everything while it was still fresh in my mind. I typed out a detailed account of what I'd seen at the party, the depravity, the confrontation with Sarah and Jason. I copied all the photos, videos, texts, and other evidence I had, making sure I had an airtight case. By the time the sun started to rise, I had a multi-page file ready to send to Tom. It wasn't just about leaving Sarah anymore. I had everything I needed to bury her if it came down to it. I finally passed out on the couch around 7 a.m., completely drained, both physically and emotionally. I don't know how long I slept, but I was jolted awake by the sound of the front door creaking open. My heart immediately started pounding as I sat up, dreading what was coming. There she was, Sarah, slinking in, looking completely disheveled. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smudged and streaked down her face, and the red dress she'd been wearing was wrinkled and hanging off her like a tattered rag, the neckline torn halfway down her chest. When she saw me, she froze, her eyes wide with fear. "Ethan, you're here?" she stammered, clutching her purse to her chest like it was a shield. I stood up slowly, a strange sense of power filling me as I met her gaze. "Yeah, I'm here, all right. Waiting for you to crawl back after your night of debauchery." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off, holding up a hand. "Don't bother with the lies, Sarah. I saw everything. The party, the activities. You and Jason, going at it like a couple of animals for anyone who cared to watch." Her face crumpled, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Oh God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. You have to believe me," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Save it," I growled. "We're done. First thing tomorrow, I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of disgusting behavior you two have been up to." She let out a choked sob, stepping forward, reaching out to me in a desperate plea. "No, please, Ethan. We can work through this. It was just a lapse. One moment of weakness. I still love you. You're my everything." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "You're unbelievable. Still lying to my face after I caught you red-handed? It's too late for that." I took a step closer, looming over her. She flinched, genuine fear flashing in her eyes. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow night. Go stay with your mother or your sister. I don't care. Just be gone. If you're still here after that, I'll have the police remove you." She opened her mouth again, but I stopped her with a raised finger. "And don't even think about trying to take Lily after everything you've done. You're lucky I'll even allow you visitation." With that, I brushed past her and made my way upstairs, leaving her sobbing in the entryway. For the first time in days, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest, like an anvil had been dropped off my shoulders. I could finally breathe again. The next few days were a blur of meetings with lawyers, realtors, and financial advisors as I put my plan into motion. Tom, my bulldog of a divorce attorney, practically salivated when I laid out the whole sordid story for him. Adultery, deviant behavior, he was practically giddy. "Ethan, my man, with this evidence, we're going to take her to the cleaners," he said, rubbing his hands together. "She'll be too ashamed to show her face in the junior league after I'm done with her." There was a dark part of me that relished the thought of publicly humiliating Sarah, of making her feel just a fraction of the pain and betrayal she'd put me through. But then I'd look at the framed family photos on Tom's desk, the smiling shots of him with his wife and kids, and my heart would ache. As angry as I was, I didn't want to do anything that would traumatize Lily more than she'd already been through. She was my priority now, protecting her, helping her heal through this nightmare as best I could. Speaking of Lily, she had been my rock those first few days after the truth came out. While Sarah was off God knows where, lost in her own guilt and avoidance, Lily stayed by my side every moment she could. We'd sit out on the back patio in the evenings, sipping sweet tea and watching the sunset over the Chattahoochee River. She'd hold my hand, letting me vent, giving me the space to release all the hurt and rage without judgment. "I don't know how I'm going to face everyone, baby girl," I confessed one night, staring down into my glass. "Your mom's family, our friends, the whole country club. How do I even show my face after this?" Lily squeezed my hand tighter, meeting my eyes with a look of determination that reminded me so much of her grandmother. "Who cares what any of them think, Dad? You didn't do anything wrong here. Mom and Uncle Jason are the ones who should be ashamed, not you." I felt a swell of pride at her maturity and resilience. My little girl was growing up, becoming a young woman right before my eyes. "You just have to hold your head high and show them you're not going to let this break you," she continued, her voice firm. "We're Reeves, remember? We're stronger than that." I pulled her into a tight hug, feeling an overwhelming sense of love and gratitude for her. You're absolutely right, kiddo. As long as I've got you in my corner, I can make it through anything. In those first few weeks, Lily was the one who kept me from sinking. She took over cooking, cleaning, and managing everything with her usual efficiency and determination. Anytime the despair started creeping in, she was there with a hug, a kind word, or just a silly joke to make me smile through the pain. While Sarah was off God knows where, staying with her sister and doing whatever she was doing, Lily and I hunkered down, focusing on putting our lives back together, one small step at a time. We started taking long walks around the neighborhood each evening, waving to neighbors, pretending everything was normal while the reality of our situation felt like a waking nightmare. One evening, as we strolled past the Blake's house, Mrs. Blake, sweet as ever, bustled out with a pecan pie in her hands. "Ethan, Lily, I've been meaning to catch y'all," she called, her thick southern accent heavy in the air. "I've heard some awful rumors going around the club, and I just had to see for myself if you two were all right." My stomach dropped. Of course, the news was already spreading through the community like wildfire. I could feel Lily tense beside me as we approached Mrs. Blake's porch. "Well now, you don't have to say a word if you don't want to," the little old lady continued, her eyes full of genuine concern. "I just wanted to let y'all know that the whole neighborhood's here for you, whatever you're going through." She handed me the pie with a warm smile. My famous pecan pie always helps get through the tough times. "You two take care now, you hear?" I blinked back tears that I didn't expect to feel. Lily and I thanked her as we walked away, the sweet, nutty smell of the pie enveloping us. For the first time in days, a tiny spark of hope flickered inside me. Maybe we didn't have to go through this alone. Maybe, just maybe, there were people in our corner who could look past the scandal and simply care about us. Over the next few days, the kindness just kept coming. Casseroles, cakes, and other homemade meals appeared on our doorstep from well-meaning neighbors. My assistant at the office gave me a tight hug and reassured me she was there if I needed anything. Even a few guys from my Sunday morning basketball group reached out to see if I wanted to grab a beer. No questions asked. It was like the community I'd been part of for years, the one I feared would shun me after everything, was circling the wagons around Lily and me, protecting us, showing us that we didn't have to go through this with our heads hung in shame. With each gesture of kindness, each smile or reassuring pat on the shoulder, I felt myself standing a little taller. The anger and bitterness slowly started to fade, replaced by a newfound sense of strength and resilience. Yes, Sarah's betrayal nearly broke me, but I realized it only had as much power over me as I allowed it to. Thanks to my amazing daughter and the support of our community, I was finding the strength to define myself again. I wasn't just some poor schmuck who'd been cheated on by his wife. I was Ethan Morris, man of integrity, devoted father, and someone who could survive anything as long as I had the right people by my side. That evening, Lily and I sat in the backyard, watching the fireflies blink over the river, the pecan pie sitting between us. "You know," I said, squeezing Lily's hand, "when all this started, I thought I had lost everything. I truly believed your mom's actions had broken me in a way I'd never recover from." Lily looked at me with those wise eyes of hers, silently letting me continue. "But this past week, the kindness, the support from our friends and neighbors, it's made me realize how wrong I was. Yeah, your mom did me as dirty as anyone could, but she didn't break me. Not even close." I motioned toward the peaceful scene around us, the river glittering in the moonlight, the sweet smell of wisteria blooming in the distance. "This is my world, baby girl. This community, these people who have our backs no matter what. As long as I've got this, got you, then I've got everything I need to keep going and to be happy. Your mom can't take that away from me." Lily's eyes welled with unshed tears as she leaned over and hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Dad," she whispered. "You're the strongest person I know." As I held my daughter close under the deepening night sky, a profound sense of peace washed over me. Sarah's betrayal no longer had any hold on me. I was going to survive this nightmare and come out stronger and happier than ever before. This was just the beginning of my new life, and with everything I needed right here, it was going to be a great one.